Okay, hello. So we're here with the Real Estate Investors Club, and I'm talking today to Jonathan DeYoe, who is a financial planner from California. And I had the good fortune to read his book, Mindful Money, maybe a couple of years ago, which I really enjoyed. And so I'm excited to have a chat with Jonathan today about some of the financial aspects of what's going on, and just to generally his advice on how to deal with finances generally. So Jonathan, do you want to tell us just a little bit about how you got what you do, how you got started, what's your claim to fame?
Well, claim to fame, I'm not famous, but the book is the closest I get. But what I do, I've been a financial planner for about 25 years now. I've been in the financial planning business for about 25 years. But the way I got into it was I got really interested in investing and in stocks and business when I was like 9. So I've been an equity investor for 40 years, and I'm 48, so I guess 39 years. I'm rounding. And I've always loved it. I've always the idea of business. I've always liked the idea of financial independence and financial freedom. Growing up, we didn't really have any of this. We had very little. And my dad always had me read. I read probably 50 different, maybe 70 different how to invest in real estate books. My dad had some real estate when I was growing up. He took me to his broker, and I read value line research when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. And I love this stuff. I love money. It's very interesting. Everyone's emotions around money. And I know people that are really, really wealthy and unhappy. And I know people that are really, really not wealthy and totally happy. So I thought this idea of mindfulness around money is something that's really in my heart. So when working with clients on face-to-face, or when I'm doing educational stuff, I'm always talking about what is meaningful to you. What is your plan? What is the thing that feeds you? And that's, I think, the most important thing to understand in the whole financial planning world is it starts with you. It's personal finance. Personal is the operative word.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess if we get into a little bit of the questions that I want to ask you today. So we're a real estate club, and so a lot of our listeners are motivated by the idea of financial freedom. And, you have a lot to say in your book about how financial freedom operates through, working by default, let's say, or, that there are some illusions that we live under that has us on a kind of a treadmill, or that has us going through behaviors that maybe are not very useful to attaining financial freedom, and certainly not attaining a vision of financial freedom that's personalized. So I don't know if you could maybe say a little bit about that.
So yeah, I think financial freedom is an admirable goal. It's been a goal of mine for basically my entire life. But I think it's a really long path. And I think the reality is, whatever your path to financial freedom might be, whether it's equity ownership or real estate ownership, life is going to punch you in the mouth. And so the idea is, recognize it's a long path, recognize it's going to take work and discipline and the continuous application of really good habits. And most of all, it's going to take patience. You're going to be on this path for 20, 30 years. There isn't a fast path to financial independence or wealth. That being said, the path to financial freedom should, I think, include real estate, but I don't think it should include real estate exclusively. And I think the idea, and we'll talk about this a little later, I assume, the idea of blending your different income streams and your different sources of wealth and your different assets, this whole idea of diversification actually matters, especially when you have things like COVID-19. When coronavirus hits, if all you had was a rental property and your renters aren't paying you anymore, that's rough, right? So you need to have other things at the same time. And I've been both a stock investor and a real estate investor personally for over 20 years. And those two things, sometimes one is in favor, sometimes the other's in favor. It's a good idea to blend those things to protect yourself through all the different aspects.
Okay, well, look, since you mentioned it, why don't we just go down that rabbit hole a little bit?
Which rabbit hole?
The rabbit hole of saying that it's so obviously myself, my only investments are real estate, and it's even worse than that. My only investments are real estate in Montreal. Okay, so I've hyper concentrated my assets. And so, on the one hand, I think real estate people certainly like I own a property management company. And so I like the fact that I can drive to my buildings. I like the fact that my team manages them. I get kind of an economy of scale going there with the fact that once you know the good roof guy and you know the good plumber and they can make you deals and stuff like that, there's an advantage to that. So let's say if you were having a conversation with me and saying, okay, Terrie, why is this not a good idea? What's the purpose of diversification and why, what could go wrong with that?
So I don't think that there's many paths to the top of the mountain. Like I don't think that there's a 100% right way to do it. I guess my mix of goals is financial independence and the ability to take my eyes off of it.
Okay.
Right. So I don't if I mix that second one in there, I don't think solely real estate is the way I can go. Because having been an investor in real estate for many, many years, the thing that causes me the most work is my real estate. Like the thing I have to constantly pay attention to and constantly think about. And the thing when I'm on vacation and I get calls because something happens, right? That's my real estate. And so ideally, I want to have enough wealth, spinning off enough income from a variety of sources, but I want to not always have to be paying attention. And that's what diversification gives you, is the ability to say, you know what, that'll take care of itself. I don't have to worry about it. Or I have management in place that can take care of it. And maybe it won't be optimal. Maybe when they do the roof, they won't call the right guy and it'll cost me $8,000 more than it should cost me. But I don't really have to worry about it. Because my goal is freedom. It's financial, it's freedom. And the one thing I noticed about real estate, and most people that work with real estate for many, many, many years, is when they're 70, they're like, I'm tired of this. I need to find a way to not have to be active in the game. So that's, for me, why you have diversification. So you can actually create enormous wealth in real estate. No question about it. You can create financial freedom, but it's way more finance than freedom. And if you put those management structures in place, you can have both. I have them. All of my rental real estate is in a different state. So I can't actually do anything about it, but I still always get the phone call.
Yeah, that's beautiful, isn't it? In fact, I would say the tenants, they know when you can't do anything about it, that's when they're going to call you.
Right. Well, I mean, thankfully, I have management, so management gets the call, but then management calls me. Can we spend this? Sure. I don't know. I'm not there. Just figure it out. That's what I hired you for, right?
But so then we get into risk a little bit. Okay. So for sure, I think real estate or not real estate, when you talk about investments, diversification is always a good idea, being over concentrated in one market or one specific kind of real estate, or one specific kind of stock, let's say, leaves you open to whatever ups and downs can go on the market. But when, let's say, we look at this COVID situation where the stock market has been incredibly volatile, and I think us real estate investors, at least in Montreal, we're kind of bracing, we don't really know which way things are going to go. But at the same time, it's not like buildings have lost 25 or 30% of their value kind of overnight. So I don't know if you could maybe speak to just the difference in those asset classes and why, if I'm looking at putting money into stocks today, one of the things I would say is okay, well, how do I know that some event's not going to happen? I'm going to lose 30% of it overnight.
Okay, so I actually want to touch on that specific thing, that losing 30% of it overnight thing. So if that's the only time you'll ever lose 30% overnight is not if you're investing, it's if you're speculating, right?
Okay.
It's absolutely true. You can invest in real estate, you can invest in gold, you can invest in stocks, you can invest in a private business, and that private business or that stock or that real estate or that gold can go down in value 30% overnight. But I would submit that that's not a loss yet, okay? That is volatility. Volatility is natural. It's normal. It occurs in every market. It's something we can't predict. We don't know when it goes down. We don't know how far it's going to go down. We don't know how long it's going to stay down. We don't know this. What we do know going in is that volatility is real. It's something we can expect. It's something that we should always anticipate. If you're not anticipating it, then you're not actually doing the purchase process the right way, okay? So that being said, if it's just volatility and it's just normal, then where is the risk in that? Well, the risk is the human response.
Okay.
Risk is volatility plus panic. The one thing I will note specifically that we're going through right now is COVID drove the market down, the stock market down, very quickly, much more quickly than we've ever seen, ever. We went down 34% in about 25 days. It was crazy, but it's mostly recovered. Like most of my, we're 30 days in, 45 days out, and most portfolios are down sub 10% now, right? So that's normal volatility. That's not something to be terrified of. And so the question is, what did you do in that time frame? And if you sat on your hands and did nothing, and you continue sitting in your hands and doing nothing, you're going to be fine. A lot of assumptions in this. The first assumption is, you don't own one company, or you don't own one sector. You own everything. This is diversification, right? We're not. Same goes if you buy a building, and I'm in California, right? We've seen, oh my God, we've seen 3 years of fires. We always have the potential for earthquakes. And if you have all your real estate in one place and something like that happens, flood, fire, earthquake, you're devastated. You have to have diversification, whether it's just real estate or among different companies. Diversification protects you. And then, and this is where it gets really interesting for me, then you have to work on the human ability to hang on. You have to work on that really good habit. And for us in my office, one of the biggest supports we have of that is we do a financial plan. So we know I've made these trade-offs. I can spend on this and this and this and this. I'm going to invest this amount every single month. And maybe if you're a real estate investor, what that means is I set it in cash until I have enough cash so I can buy another building. So I'm building up my down payment amounts so that I can buy another building. But again, real estate, you need to have a whole bunch of cash on the sideline for the roof that needs replacing that's not covered by insurance, or the hot water heater. And I had one building. Oh my God, I had a building that, so I bought, this is my mistake. I bought a building sight unseen. I had my dad drive by it, and my dad said, "Jonathan, don't buy this building." And I said, the price is too good. And I bought the building anyways. And, this is 10 years later, I had to replace all the siding. I had to replace the foundation, the roof, all the windows. So I basically, bought the building again 10 years later. So, it's a lot of the risk can be covered in purchasing the right things, but the more diversified you are, the less actual risk you have. And then the human ability to follow the plan, have a plan, follow the plan, then Corona becomes less of an issue.
Okay. So I wonder, what's come up with in some discussions, previous interviews that I've done over the last little while. So there's this difference between speculating and investing. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you could maybe just speak to those two things, or maybe give us, our listeners, an idea of what the difference between those two things are. Because I think, especially to give you a little background, the Montreal market has been super hot for the last 2-3 years. And there's a kind of a conversation now going on about, how much more can things go up? Is it speculation? What's investing? Maybe if you could just give us your 2 cents on what the difference between those two things are, and where we should locate ourselves in there.
That is one of the biggest risks as investors is you start to speculate without knowing it. And that's, absolutely that this is critical. So, it's also very difficult to describe the difference, but I'll do my best. So investing is the idea that I'm going to buy an asset. And actually, real estate investors know what investing is generally. You're not buying that asset for upside appreciation. You're buying that asset, real estate specifically, because someone else is going to pay it off for you. And you're going to have tax advantages between now and when it's paid off. It's a slow wealth development process. In the stock market, where I'm way more familiar, being broadly diversified is investing. Picking, is it Apple or Samsung that's going to win the smartphone war? I don't know. I'm going to buy them both. I'm going to diversify. I'm going to buy them both. That's investing. I anticipate that long term, both these companies are going to do really, really well. They're going to sell more phones and create more iPads and iDevices, and they'll have more things, and they're ultimately both can be very successful. So I'm going to buy them both. So as an investor, you're thinking about 10, 15, 20, 30 years. As a speculator, you're thinking about 10 minutes, a day, an hour, 3 years. The house flippers of 2007, 2008, those were speculators. And in the United States, Florida was a bastion for that. We had all kinds of people buying pre-built condominiums on the coast of Florida, and they were buying them for, they were bidding up the rights to the pre-built condominiums. So someone got in there and said, we're going to build these condominiums. We're going to price them at $150,000. And someone else says, oh, $150,000. It's not built yet. There's no rent. That's probably a good investment. I'm going to put $200,000. And someone else said, oh, $250,000. And they bid these things up before they were created. That's speculation. That's the assumption that the greater fool theory will work. I'll always have some other idiot that'll buy it at a higher price. Investing is relying upon the intrinsic value of the asset to produce the long-term return. Go ahead.
And so how do you, let's say, in Montreal, we have, like I said, a pretty hot market right now. And so let's say that, I've got my structures here, or I want to this is the place that I want to buy real estate in. How do I sort of correct for the speculatory things that are going on around me?
So this is the challenge, I think, in real estate. You almost all real estate investors I know invest in their own backyard. Mm-hmm. That's where they know, that's where their management is. And so they are automatically concentrated geographically. So going in, for you, it's Montreal. So it's a big city. It's not going anywhere. I don't know what the labor market's like. I don't know what those kinds. It's likely that in Canada, just like in the United States, just like in Europe, we have a shortage of housing. So depending on what you're investing in housing, I think that's a pretty good long-term investment. Can you buy too high? Sure. You could probably overpay for something because it's a hot market. But if you can make the cash flow work, if in the purchase price, you can make the cash flow work so that it will rent and pay itself off over time, it may not go up in value much, but the investment can still work. Again, you're investing 20 years, someone else is paying your mortgage, you'll get the value out of it. I would probably try to do many buildings. I probably wouldn't try to do one building. I like what you're doing when you said you also have a property management business. So you're already you're hedging your income bets. I'll manage your real estate and I'll take some income from that because I'm already good at it. I'm already managing my own. That makes a lot of sense. And you create an asset in the management company as well. So you actually have a business that's an asset value, and you have an income stream from that asset value, and you have real estate. So you are investing in business. It's just your business, which is probably the best thing you can do anyways. I'm trying to train my kids and other high school students that I just filmed my first TED Talk, and the TED Talk was actually for high school students. And I said two things. I said, the first thing you have to do is this is for high school students, so they don't all know this right off the bat, but you got to spend less than you make. That's basic. We all know that. The second thing is you got to become an owner. I don't care what you own, but you have to be an owner. Financial freedom comes from ownership, whether that's businesses, shares of great companies, real estate. You have to be an owner. If you're not an owner, then you're not getting ahead. So you're doing all three, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess also in terms of, if I can extrapolate maybe some of your comments from stocks to the real estate scenario. So, where we could get into speculation is that markets go up and down, and real estate cycles are longer, I think, than stock cycles generally. And I think I read somewhere that it's an 18-year, I don't know if that's just Canada or it's real estate cycles in general, but a cycle can be somewhere around 18 years. And so the issue with that is that many of the people who are active today, we actually weren't around for the last downturn. And so the experience of that, unless you're talking to people who are almost in their 60s, no one's been through that. So we don't exactly know what it feels like, and we don't get lulled into a false sense of security. But that, let's say, as long as you made solid cash flow projections, and as long as you're sure that your building is making money and the tenants are paying off the mortgage, if you don't sell, you don't lose.
Yeah. And you probably know this about real estate. The upside of real estate is almost always in the purchase price, right? Because you set, well, not just the price, but the accurate understanding of the potential future costs of the building, which is where I made my mistake. But if you set your purchase price right, and you know the incomes from the building actually take care of the building, and you can be pretty confident of those incomes. So I would say that separates commercial right now from residential.
Yeah, in a big way. Yeah.
So if you make the purchase price right and you know your incomes are solid, the building is going to be fine. Right? You have to be able to manage it. You got to be able to collect, but it's going to be there for 20. It's a building. Like that's the nice part about real estate is it's tangible, it's solid. You know, short of a fire or things that are often insurable, and you should hopefully be insuring against those. The building will be there. The rents will continue. Again, I think commercial is a question right now, and I'm not predicting that commercial is going to have a hard go. I think commercial in very inexpensive areas might have. I think in San Francisco, I think you're going to have a lot of people that will leave their commercial leases in San Francisco because Twitter is saying you can work remotely. So people that are right now living in San Francisco, paying the highest rents in the country, are going to move to Idaho, or maybe Canada. Right? They'll move up there and they'll work from Canada, and they'll ski more often, and they'll have a better lifestyle outside, and they'll love that. But they'll get paid like they're working in San Francisco, which is it's a pretty nice trade-off.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think there's been a lot of speculation like up here, and I'm sure everywhere, in terms of commercial real estate, and just the fact that as we go back to whatever the new normal after COVID is going to be, I think there's going to be big winners and losers from the fact that we all figured out that we can work from home now. And landlords who own a lot of office space, and especially maybe B-grade office space or stuff like that, even big companies are going to have less floors. It's not that no one's going to have an office, but maybe instead of 3 floors of a building, they're going to have 1 floor. And then what's going to happen to all that excess space?
So there's, I make that argument, and I agree. I think commercial office specifically is may have a tough go, but then there's two obviously really solid counter arguments to that as well. The first is everyone knows this already, so the price is probably already in. I don't know. I haven't looked at statistics, but I'm guessing that if I was to go out there and buy an office building right now, it might be a lower price. I might get a better deal on it right now. If not now, then 6 months from now, I'll probably get a better deal on it. So the price should reflect the potential future rents, right? And the second argument is, man, we are so resilient as humans. And I know the people in my office. I have 8 people that I work with in my team, and they all want to go back to work. They want to be in the office together. It's way more efficient than talking through Slack or through, instant messaging of any kind. It's way more efficient. It's more fun. If you're working because you got to have an income and it's a slog and you hate going to work, then sure, you're going to want to work from home. But if you go to work because you like going to work and you like the people you work with and you enjoy what you do, you want to go to work. That doesn't change. And we forget that in this time when we're all kind of separated, and we're all sequestered at home, and we're all we're a little bit woe is me. We're a little bit this kind of sucks. I don't really like this anymore. But the reality is, when things open up again, I will be the first one to go back to restaurants, but I'll go back to restaurants. I know I will. And I miss the silverware clinking. I miss the conversation around me. And I miss
making food that's not me.
Right.
I'm sick of my own cooking.
We've actually enlisted both of our kids, so they take 2 nights a week, and they're both cooking, and so nice. We get to try new things.
Okay, so if we can change tax a little bit, one of your strengths is definitely individual financial planning. So if you had something to say to people about how it is that investors need to plan their financial future, and obviously we're a real estate club, so some of that's going to have to do with real estate, but what would be your elevator pitch for how and why people need to have a solid financial plan?
So I think the really big thing that I would say is the most important thing we can do is stop trying to predict.
Okay.
And that goes along with stop speculating. I don't know many investors who have destroyed themselves. I know a ton of speculators who have destroyed themselves. So stop predicting. When you're buying a piece of real estate, when you're thinking about building a portfolio, you really want to understand that you can commit to this for a long time. Discipline, habit, and patience are the most important things you can do. And so that means you have to have a plan. What is that? What is a plan? A plan means, okay, I know what my cash flows are going to be in and out. I know I can sustain this investment. In other words, I can put more money into it. I can save more. If I'm committing to just real estate, then my plan should include, I need to put $1,000 a month or $1,000 a month away into an account that eventually I use for the down payment on the next real estate. And then maybe I have 4 pieces of real estate and they're all single family homes. I need to diversify out of single family homes. The next one shouldn't be a single family home. The plan should include, if you only have 1 piece of real estate, the plan should include the next kind of real estate. It also should include your liquid assets, which could be stocks and bonds, could just be cash. I know lots of real estate people that just have cash on the sidelines because that's how they protect themselves, right? And then it's do the work. So you're not predicting anymore, right? You have a plan, then do the work. You have to find the right purchases. You have to keep educating yourself about the markets you're in, the markets you're in. You have to keep being curious, just like you're asking questions about, okay, Montreal, am I too concentrated? What about this COVID thing? Keep learning, keep asking questions, and don't just read the people that agree with you already. Read all kinds of academics, read the journalists, read everyone that says anything about the topic you're involved in. Be the smartest one. Stay curious, be the smartest one. Always seek for diversification. And then I'm gonna add this last piece in, and it's a little strange, and I think that we talked about it earlier, but I really think that this all starts with a heavy focus on your own health. So my own background, about 13 years ago, and I don't know, no one knows this. If you read the book, you might have skipped over this paragraph, but 13 years ago, I weighed in at 290 pounds. I had a 2-year-old child. I had one on the way. I was pretty sure that if I kept drinking and eating the way I was drinking and eating, and I didn't exercise, I didn't drink water, and wasn't taking care of myself, I wasn't going to make it to my child's 15th, 20th birthday. Okay. So I made a conscious decision, and that conscious decision on my health, it changed my business. It changed the relationship with my wife. It changed my relationship with my son, my kids. It changed everything for the better. And so what does that mean? Well, I started exercising every single day, started eating better, started drinking water, stopped drinking a lot of alcohol, started getting 7 hours of sleep a night instead of 3 or 4, which is my normal for like 20 years. And then this is the one, I started meditating every day. I had meditated before, but I started meditating every single day. And the thing we don't know about our brains is our brains are constantly looking for things to bitch about. They're constantly just gathering stuff that we can complain about, that can support our narrative. And we got to get out of that. And the only way out of that is to understand that's what your brain does and to practice recognizing when your brain's being an idiot. And you have to let that stuff go. And that's meditation. And that's not, it's 2,000, 3,000 years of Buddhist meditation. That's sort of where I practice. But there's a ton of academic research on this now. 10 minutes staring at a wall, listen to your thoughts every single day makes a huge difference in what you're thinking. And so that's focus on your health, start meditating every day. I think everything else kind of falls into place.
Mm-hmm. And so, I'm curious now. I did skip over that paragraph in your book because I feel like this is, I really did read it from cover to cover. So, but
I'm embarrassed by it. So I kind of hid it in there.
Okay. But so, when you're looking at making kind of a major lifestyle change like that, because I do agree, I'm a martial arts person. And so I've, that practice has definitely informed everything else that I do. So it's not like I went through kind of a major transition, but I think anytime you're trying to make any major change to any aspect of your life that's been ingrained for a really long time, I don't know what gave you sort of the power and the methodology to do that. Was it just kind of a spur of the moment decision really quick, or I don't know, what happened exactly?
So this may stimulate your memory from the book. So here's what happened. I was going skiing. My son was 2, so my parents were coming with us. And we were going to Tahoe, and we're staying, I think, in my uncle's cabin in Tahoe. And I had forgotten my ski pants. So my dad's a big guy, love him to death. He's big. And he said, you know what, you can borrow mine. And I giggled. I was like, no way. His pants are going to fit me. It's no way. And they were tight on me.
Here.
And I was like, ooh, this has to change. And that was the moment. And then, over the next month, nothing changed. But late night TV, I was watching, and this is, I don't know if you guys see this, P90X. I don't know if that's something that you guys know what that is. Okay. So there's a company out of San Diego. I think it's out of San Diego, and they do these videos. And I purchased this package called P90X, and they delivered to my house, and it was DVDs. And every single day I put in this DVD, and this day it was, chest and back. And the next day was cardio, and the next day was Kempo, and the next day was, cardio, and the next day was a different, and it has 13 different extra. And I just did that for like 6 months. When I first started, I would pass out after 10 minutes. It was awful. It was horrible. I hated it. And the guy that was on the disc said, you know what? We realize this sucks for you. Just keep push and play. Just keep push and play. Just keep push and play. And that's all I did. And then I started going, you know what? I feel a little better. Let's start eating better too. Let's not drink that second cocktail at night. And suddenly your brain just kind of shifts. It says you're taking care of yourself. This is important. Start teaching you the different ways to do it. And you just realize I don't really need to do all these bad things that I did. I was doing them before because I didn't feel good about I don't know what the reasons are, but by taking that initial step and developing one habit, you can easily tie on other habits. So my morning routine now is like 2.5 hours of just self-care every morning. To get that done, I got to get up at 5 in the morning. So by 7:30, I'm free to be part of the family. I got to get ready to go to work. But it backed my morning time up to 4:30 for a long time. Then I decided I was crazy, so I do it at 5 now, and it makes a huge difference. That muscle you're exercising in your brain, that habit muscle. How do I develop that habit? Health is a great way to start. I think finances. How do I spend less than I make? How do I continue to save when it's scary? How do I continue to stay invested when it's scary? Those are disciplines. Health is a discipline. I think that the idea of developing discipline crosses categories. Health is an easy one to start with. For me, it was, and obviously I let it go for 15 years, and then I started up again. So I think it's a great way to begin the process of getting control of your financial life by being healthy. Does that,
yeah, I think that
make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I really like that, because I think we actually had like a guest on yesterday who's a climber, and he was talking partly about the fact that like certain skills that, like, let's say mental training, right, like something that you might learn in one sphere, so let's say in climbing, whatever mental skills you learn in that are then going to be transferable to everything else that you do. And like definitely for me, like for my sports life, like whatever I learned in that sphere, I've been able to just cookie cutter it to everything else, to my business, to my professional life, to like how I do or don't take risks, let's say in real estate investing. And I think, like, as you say, whatever aspect of your life you start with, and health is just such an easy thing, because you don't need $10,000 in your bank account. You don't need like any massive thing to get going. You don't need to start a business. You don't need to like print business cards. You don't need to take any action other than modify what you put in your mouth and maybe how much you move or don't move.
Right. It's such an easy, cheap, inexpensive way to develop discipline. I went from a $150,000 lifestyle on a $60,000 income before that, which is, I don't know if anyone else ever experiences that. Debt and making it work, and the health turned it around. And I do really well now, and I'm really happy with my life and my family and the house and everything. But for me, literally, that all started with a change in my mentality around my health.
Mm-hmm. And like developing the discipline muscle to follow through on whatever the plan is.
Yep.
I think that's great. And again, like I refer back to the interview that I did yesterday, but I think like we really live in a instant gratification kind of culture, where we expect that like you're going to lose 40 pounds in 2 weeks, and everything's going to happen so instantaneously. You're going to build wealth. You're going to get rich quick. You're going to speculate. You're going to do a couple of good deals, and then you're going to be set for life. Like I think, if I look at my own experience, like I think the reality is much more incremental, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like those extra 50 or 100 calories that maybe you shouldn't eat that you do, or the extra however much money that you save, or the decisions that you make to, let's say, forego the nice car and choose instead to put that money onto a down payment on a condo, or like whatever it is that you do, like those like little tiny decisions that you make day after day that you almost don't feel add up over time, and then you wake up 10 years later and your life has changed completely.
And the really important thing for me is, I mean, we're going through COVID. I'm sure you've seen the news about what's happened in the United States with the death of George Floyd and the protests that have become riots after the fact. There's all of this stuff that's happening all around us all the time, and we can't control that. And that's the part that's the most frustrating for me, is there's nothing I can do about COVID-19. There's nothing I can do about how a large portion of the U.S. population feels about how they have been treated for hundreds of years, mistreated for hundreds of years. It's not on them. It's on us. But I can do something about these small decisions, and I do know that these small decisions will make an enormous difference in anyone's life that decides to make them. But that's it. You got to decide. And if you've made the decision, you have to commit. And once you've committed, you just follow through. And if you decide, commit, and follow through, you can be financially independent. You can be fit and healthy. You can be a great partner. You can be a great parent. All those things that we all really, really want in our lives, we can have if we decide and we commit and then we follow through.
Mm-hmm. Great. I love that. So if we can just go on to like a little segue onto the, the COVID situation, like for sure, in the real estate world, everybody's asking themselves, okay, how do we react to this? And we kind of got over like our rent hurdle here. So it seems that, commercial rents are complex, but residential rents seem to be holding up, especially depending if you're not heavily into Airbnb or anything like that depends on tourism. But if you could give some advice just in general for how people could kind of weather this situation. Like, I think, the immediate financial peril, like we didn't go off a cliff, at least in the Montreal real estate world, we didn't go off a cliff. But how do we move forward in this?
So I think there's two really important parts to this. I think the first part is something we can't do anything about right now. And that is, before stuff happens, we have to anticipate that stuff's going to happen. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but what's the bumper sticker? Shit happens. Like it does, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's a Buddhist monk that I know who says, you have to imagine that the plate will break, but you still have to take care of the plate. And then when the plate breaks, you go, oh, I knew that was going to happen. Like, I think that little message says everything. I mean, before this stuff happens, you have to have cash on the sidelines. You have to have the emergency fund. You got to have the reserves. And real estate specifically requires you to have reserves, not just because rents might not come in, but because stuff breaks. Like, that's, again, I'll go back to my story. And I spent $150,000 last year on renovating something that I never thought I'd have to renovate. That's out of pocket, right? That's a pain. But you have to be liquid for that. You have to be able to come up with that money. If COVID happens, you got to be able to weather the storm. The thing I don't know, and this is the second thing, in the United States, the Fed and Congress have put out an enormous amount of money that's available to us for small businesses. And here, small business real estate is small business, right? So I'm assuming it's the same there. I don't know what the Canadian government has done, but I would say, do not be embarrassed. Do not feel any shame. COVID is happening to everybody. You go after every single thing you have access to. And if there's a government program that is supportive, there's going to be trillions of dollars, trillions globally, probably tens of trillions of dollars globally. There's going to go to someone's balance sheet. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of it's going to be your balance sheet. I hope it's little, but it's going to go to someone's balance sheet. And to the extent that governments can this is why we have governments. Like, this is why those programs exist, is because they're here to backstop all this stuff. And I don't know how Canada is responding to to COVID. I don't know how deep the lockdowns are. I'm in California, and in California, we're not open. We just got the extension order that this is going to go on indefinitely.
Wow.
We are lightly open. Like you can pick up something at a retail store on the curb. You can get delivery from a restaurant. Most restaurants aren't open. So some restaurants are open and they're doing delivery. We have delivery services. There's not a lot you can do. All the sporting events are canceled. College may not happen next semester. My kids may not go back to school. They were out of school February of this year. They haven't been in school. I mean, they're doing it over Zoom and over, FaceTime and all this stuff, but they're not in class. And if that's going to happen for the foreseeable future, 10 more months, wow. Like that's, I don't know. Could we have prepared for this? No. But we have to know that it can happen and do our absolute best to prepare for it. And then we have to go to those programs that are supportive of businesses. So I don't know, what are the programs in Canada? I'm curious.
Well, our government has actually done, I think, a really good job with, first of all, supporting people's incomes. So just because they've, we have like a $2,000 a month program, instead of unemployment. So pretty much everybody who's been affected has access to that, which means that the baseline of the residential rents are getting paid. Unless it's people who have, crazy rents or people who are looking for an excuse to not pay in the first place, pretty much they've solved that baseline of people being able to survive. And then the next level of aid was basically assistance for small business and assistance for landlords, deferring mortgage payments and stuff like that. They basically stepped in to make sure that we don't have a meltdown. And I think they've done a pretty good job of that. Now, what's going to be the upshot as, industries change, and how are we going to have a second wave? Are we going to have to close down again? What does the 90% economy look like? I've been reading a bunch of kind of international press about that talks about okay, we are now for next year going to be in the 90% economy. So what does that mean in terms of a slowdown? What does that mean in terms of weathering things? And small businesses have started to go under here. Again, I'm in the martial arts community, and we've now started to see the first posts about gym owners who are closing because they've now been 3 months without students and carrying the big rent, even with the assistance that's available. They can't pay their charges. So I think there is going to be, my son's all about dinosaurs, right? So I think there's going to be kind of a wave of extinctions now. Yep. And then after that, people who are able to adapt, industries that are maybe favored by this are gonna see a silver lining. But I think that however we slice it, there's going to be a wave of extinctions and of changes.
Yeah, and that is inevitable. That will happen across every culture, across every geography. We're going to have all kinds of things that go under completely. And at the same time, I know that people are thinking about, how do I invest in this period? What do I do to create an income stream after this? What's the next business going to look like? And this is one of those interesting things, I don't know what Canadian bankruptcy law is like, but here in the United States, if you have a business and you declare bankruptcy, the next day you have a pretty much clean, your credit rating is awful, but you have a sort of clean bill of health for getting a loan at a high rate. So you can actually start something the next day, right? It's not pretty. You're not going to get 3% interest. You might get 8% interest. But if you can, with elbow grease and hard work, turn that 8% interest into something that pays you, a good return, you can get money to start a business. And the interesting things about restaurants specifically, which I think are the things that are going to be hurt the most, restaurants, retail, mom and pop shops, but the restaurant industry we're going to see 50% of restaurants go under. But when a restaurant goes under, you have to remember that the oven is still there, right? The tables, the tablecloths, the silverware, the plates, the computers, the ordering systems, it's all still there. So that restaurant owner declares bankruptcy, and then there's all this stuff there, and another restaurant owner pops in and buys that stuff at just a fraction of the value and can kick off something that's it's another restaurant. And that's actually easy to do. That happens all the time. There's a natural cycle in restaurants to begin with. And so I do a lot of angel investing. And so I talked to one of my angel investing peers, and he said, yeah, we're going to have a lot of companies in our portfolio that are going to go under. Those are the ones that we're going to go under anyway. So it's going to accelerate a lot of this, and maybe a lot of things will start out of it as well. So there's going to be another side, and we just have to keep remember there's another side to this, and we'll be 90%. We won't be 90% for a long time. I mean, humans get back to activity. They work. They start new things. That's what we do. We've done it, since we were on the savannah. We've done that. So I'm not really worried long term. I think we got to get through it, and we've got to push as much of the damage onto the federal or government balance sheet as we can, because that's the only way we can extend it without ruining individual lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously, like, we're not economists. Like, that's a whole other realm of speculation of how the governments are going to deal with this, like, massive either inflation or debt bubble that they're creating. But, like, I think maybe we should leave that to the economists.
I don't think it's that. I don't think it's really that complex. I mean, I think about this stuff all the time, and I think inflation is. We have been in the United States. The inflationistas have been calling for inflation since 2007, when we started pumping money in the economy. The reality is, in a globalized world, there's a lot of disinflationary force at the same time. Yes, printing a whole bunch of money is inflationary, or can potentially be inflationary, but importing cheap things from other countries is disinflationary. And so those two things fight with each other. Are we going to be, and so if we, to the extent that we get more insular, more nationalistic, less global, then our printing money is going to be inflationary. But I think that in the United States, I think we tried this, and I think it was a mistake to try it, but I think we're going to try something else in November. I hope we're going to try something else in November. And when that happens, we'll return to our global stance. If Biden wins the election, we'll become we'll be better global partners than we are right now. And when that happens, that disinflationary force will come to battle any inflationary forces that come out of printing a lot of money. The other part of this is, in any economy, it's not the size of the debt that matters. It's the size of the debt relative to the asset. Every real estate investor knows this, right? If I have $4 million in debt, who cares if I have $8 million of real estate?
Yeah, it's actually, we'll keep just like going down this road just a little bit, and then we'll come back. I heard this actually in a conversation with my dad about the debt that came out of the Second World War, and talking about the fact, like, basically the massive debts that, like, Western countries incurred during that time period. They never paid it back. They grew their way out of it, right? And, like, part of it just with the fact that the economy grows, like, if you create this kind of a debt bubble, like in 1940, and the economy grows at like X number of percent a year for 80 years, maybe you never even have to pay that debt back.
Yes, it's always relative. It's relative to the income. It's relative to the asset. And everyone's terrified. Oh my God. I think in the US, we're going to have, oh my God, it's a big number. I think we're going to have like $26 trillion in debt after this year. That's a large number. But we have $300 trillion in assets, and we have a revenue system that, and we don't, but we can raise taxes. And I think that what we do is I think that happens. I think that's coming. Like, I predict my taxes 5 years from now are going to be much higher than they are today. Reasonably so.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that was kind of coming to the end of the questions that I had for you today. I don't know if you had any sort of concluding words or anything you feel like I missed out on. Anything?
No, you nailed it. This is great. I'm curious if you have any interaction, if other people have questions, if you guys do that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next thing. So I actually have some questions appearing on the side. So from the audience, does anybody have any questions that you would like me to ask Jonathan?
What is your audience like? I mean, how many people are here today? I don't know how to even see that.
It should show on Facebook. There's like a little eye if you look on the Facebook icon that shows. And actually, I think most of the views happen kind of after the fact. So there are people who can tune in now, but basically this interview is going to live on Facebook for the foreseeable future, and then on YouTube. and then you can kind of, whenever you have nothing to do, you can go back and have a look at it and see like how many views there were afterwards. And actually, did you mean that you say that because like on the Facebook comments, people can even comment after. So if you check up after, if there are questions, like then you can, go and respond to them later on, or I can, tag you on something if there's someone who has questions. So I don't think we have any questions right now.
Okay. Yeah, tag. Are we connected? I don't know if we're connected. Are we connected? I don't know.
We on Facebook?
Did we connect on Facebook?
I'll make sure we do. Okay, so maybe just by way of conclusion, if people want to find you or hear any of your other stuff, what's a good place for them to look?
Great. So mindful.money is the best place to go. That's the and I have to be honest, it's not the most attractive website right now. It's looking at the new version today, so it should be live maybe in a couple weeks, 3 weeks maybe, and go there. And if anyone listening to this wants to, we're going to launch a financial literacy or a do-it-yourself financial planning course coming up. And if anyone listening to this wants to get invited to that launch, I'll give anyone a discount that's in the Real Estate Investors Club. And if you give us your email and put from the Montreal Real Estate Investors Club something that signifies where you heard from us, we'll make sure you get a discount on the course, and we'll email you when it's live.
Okay, great. Well, that's very generous. Thank you. And for sure, if you guys get a chance to read, I really enjoyed your book, Mindful Money. So if you get a chance to read that just on financial planning or just about like, how to involve a more mindful perspective in how we use money in general, it really gave me some perspective shifts there. So that's great. Thank you, Jonathan, for agreeing to be here today. It was a fun discussion.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Terrie.
Okay.